poll of the audience while we're waiting?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, if you want to poll everybody, and I'll get some questions loaded up.
Okay, sounds great. So thank you for staying for ICONversations this morning. One of the things that we like to do is kind of take a poll of the audience so that we get a better idea of who we're talking to and maybe what your needs are, so we can tailor our answers or questions a little bit more. So with a show of hands, raising your hands, how many of you are brand new agents? You're still in the mentoring program, you have less than 3 transactions. So pretty good number. Okay. Those of you who did not raise your hand, how many of you still consider yourself fairly new? Maybe you're out of the mentoring program, but you're still trying to grow your business. Maybe you're not capping, or you've capped, you can't quite make ICON. How many of those are out in our audience? Yeah. Okay, so a few of you, but the majority looks to be fairly new. As a panel, we had debated earlier to talk about anything like scripts to help you get started, talking about what's going on in the market today, about interest rates going up. We could talk about prospecting. If you want to write in chat box, is there anything of major interest that you guys want icons to talk about this morning? Or we can go to our original game plan. Okay, so we have time management, landing listings, market, prospecting, how to overcome objections with price and high rates going up, market outlook. Okay. Turnkey suite and home ASAP. We'll see if we can talk about that in a little bit, but it sounds like, David, what we need to talk about, a lot of it I think is going together. It is prospecting and lead conversion, which we've talked about before, but I would marry that today with what's happened in the past week or so. My market, I'm in the Greenville, Spartanburg area, what we call the upstate of South Carolina. We have definitely seen a change in the marketplace. I mean, again, I have to say relative 3 or 4 years ago, this would still be considered an incredibly strong seller's market, but it is, because interest rates have gone up, it just feels like it's slowing down. It's actually becoming a little more reasonable, where houses are staying on for a week. People can actually go back and see it a second time. People can actually think about it and have more than a half an hour before they have to write a contract. But I think it's important to talk to people and help them think through that this market is not, it is still a good market. And I would just say to all of you, people make money in every market in real estate. They buy and sell houses in every type of market. When my husband and I first got married, we were thrilled because we had no debt and high credit scores, that we scored a 7.5% interest rate loan. That we knew people who had a 10% interest rate. People will still buy. It's just they have to kind of think through what's really happening.
It's a
So
great
David?
intro, Kathleen. So let me just start. Yep, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, so thank you for that intro. Let me just start by saying one of the best things we could probably do for those who are newer in the audience is actually explain a little bit more about why these rates are the way that they are. That's probably the most helpful things. I'm going to share my desktop screen, so if you want to look at your, above, you'll be able to see what I'm going to draw here. That's probably pretty helpful. And then I can also help you describe a little bit about how we're coaching a lot of our while the sort of sentiment and psychology goes through the buyer and seller segments, and then how to adapt, not only with scripting, but also with getting into the mindset, because it's not going to be just you saying a few magic words that all of a sudden get your buyers back into the game. It's not you saying a few magic words that all of a sudden get your sellers back into the game, because what happens is the shift is not just happening, it has already happened. So that needs to set in. The shift has already happened, and if it has already happened, then you need to be utilizing new ways of thinking and new dialogues in order to connect with your buyers and sellers. Okay, so first,
David? David? We can't hear you. David? Hang on, everyone. Let me see if I can send him a private message. And we will keep talking about this. Sorry, trying to multitask at the same time. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Give me just a second. And sorry, guys, and then I'll try to pick up the reins and talk a little bit more what I'm doing. But let me see if I can get David. I don't know what happened. Okay, well, let me step back and see if we can. I can't seem to reach him. Okay, guys, here's the thing. You have to help people understand and set expectations. Okay, and one of the tricks that I do is I use a service called Keeping Current Matters. I am sure you can find some other charts out there in Fortune or Yahoo Finance or Motley Crue or whatever, but show interest rates over the last 20 or 30 years. And what you're going to see is 6% actually is about average. It is the historical average. We are still at a time where interest rates are still really good. We're just coming off the floor when we had insanely low rates, and it was actually a negative borrowing rate between that and the banks. Okay, and that was not sustainable. So interest rates are still really good. People are still going to have to buy or sell houses, but you want to, for sellers, to kind of frame the conversation of it's not going to happen overnight like it did a year ago. You're going to have realistic expectations again of
there as well, and it's
doing
just so wonderful
repairs,
just
having
to see,
showings, and doing things
those
like that.
of
But
us that have been here a
all
lot
it
longer than
takes
I
is
have.
one
I've
good
only been here
offer,
2 years
right?
plus.
You don't really care if
family.
you get 20 offers
have
and they're crappy offers. What you want is
I'm
one
here on
good
stage.
offer.
All right.
Very
Because that's all
stylish
that
with your
really
hat and
matters.
all, Tina. There you go.
yeah, that's right.
David,
Kathleen,
you're back. Yay!
sorry about that. Did you hear me?
That's okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so sorry. My progress. Okay, so I'm gonna. You should be able to see my screen up here. So if you can, let me just share a little bit about like why we are in the place that we're at. I've been sharing this with real estate agents, and they felt that this is very helpful. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that our client wants to buy a sweet little house here. It's cute. Chimney coming in. And in order to buy that property, they need some sure because they don't have the full purchase price in the bank account. They're not cash buyers, and so they go to a loan officer. And that loan officer worked for a bank. And then when I usually ask real estate agents, hey, so how does the loan officer get the money? They typically respond with, well, they go to that bank. And that is actually incorrect. So some of those banks do portfolio loans. Many times there are cases where you've got credit unions or certain institutions that portfolio or put the loan into their portfolio. But most of the time they use something called a warehouse line. We'll just use WL as an example here. So here's our warehouse line. And let's pretend that the loan officer every single month rates around $10 million worth of business, and his warehouse line that he has for his company is also $10 million. Do you follow so far? And Kathleen, I just want to make sure that my screen is coming through clearly.
Yes, it
Okay,
is.
great. So on that warehouse line, those warehouse lines actually get purchased every single month from secondary market buyers. These are people on Wall Street, little street there called Wall Street. And that's the secondary mortgage market. And what these guys do is they put together packages of mortgages, and we call them mortgage-backed securities. And they put them together in these things called tranches. Those tranches are then sold to large investors. And so the flow of money goes something like this. Now, the problem is that last Friday, we saw these investors down here, and those investors could be the government, they could be large institutions, they could be hedge funds, they could be whatever. There were absolutely no bids on mortgage-backed securities on Friday, none. And what that means is that no one saw the value in buying these mortgages. It's not that these mortgages are bad mortgages like in 2007 and 2008. And I want to be very clear, because every time we technically hear something that reminds us of a traumatic experience, it is the human natural response to want to go exactly back to that experience. So if a guy falls off a horse, anytime he sees a horse, he remembers that horrible experience of falling off the horse. In the same exact way, we actually look at recession and we hear 90% drop in purchase prices, mass failure, simply due to the fact that should have been given their fraudulent behavior in a reporting system. This indicates
Hey, David.
Not because of fraud. It's yep.
David, your sound is really breaking up. It's hard to understand you. And you're doing an awesome job. Is there any way to refresh your
Hey guys, is the sound back?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that.
You might need to repeat your last thing about last Friday nobody bought.
Yeah, so from last Friday, there was absolutely no bid. So the mortgage market went, as people call it, no bid, which means as if you showed up at an open house, there was no attenders. You put your house in the market, no one bid. What would you do? You'd call your seller and you'd say, hey, we need to do what? We need to drop the price in order to incentivize people to come by. Well, that's exactly what happened on Friday. Literally no investors bought. And who are the investors? It could be the federal government. It could be hedge funds. It could be large institutions that are looking for large, stable returns. Now, why is that? That is simply due to inflation. Okay, inflation. If inflation is at 8%, which people think that the government is not completely truthful with this, if inflation is at 8% and you're getting only a 5% return as an investor on these mortgages, you're essentially locking in at a negative 3% interest rate, which is unstable because these are 15-year, 30-year commitments. And so in this position, investors believe that mortgage-backed securities were not the way to go. And so what does that mean? It means rates in order. And so that's the issue that we're having.
That was excellent. Thank you. I even learned something with that.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. My audio is going a little bit in and out, but hopefully that was clear.
So Soledad asked to repeat the last sentence. Again, I would, David, if you want to do that.
So yeah, that's fine. So in order to attract investors back into the mortgage-backed security space, you have to increase the interest rates of mortgages because you cannot sell a mortgage. No one actually wants to give a mortgage unless they're making money on it. It's not like these banks are just like, oh, great, yeah, I'm just going to give you a mortgage for 3%, because it costs them to get the money to give you the mortgage more than it costs for them to give you that. Hopefully that makes sense. And so in order to do that, they need to charge a consumer more than it costs them to get the money. And so that's why these interest rates are continuing to climb. And what happened last Friday was we saw an increase of 75 basis points. What does that mean? 75 basis points to prime. That is the rate that the centralized banks lend, or excuse me, the Federal Reserve lends to centralized banks. And so obviously a premium needs to get put on that because these banks need to get money, and that's how you get interest rates in the mid sixes. And here's what you guys need to know is that on Friday, MBS went no bid. On Wednesday, I personally watched Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Chairman, announce not only a 75 basis increase, but they're projecting another 175 basis point increase. So for a total of 250 basis points increases since the beginning of this year. So your rates are going up about 2.5%. You can very easily, I can nearly guarantee you 7 to 8% interest rates by the end of the year. So what do you do? What do you tell your buyers? Maybe I'll pause here, and if anyone has any questions, you can put that in the chat. Hopefully my audio has been clear as well.
I think Margaret Say has her hand up. Margaret, did you want to say something?
Well, actually not on purpose, but yes, I do have a question. What do you say to sellers now that have waited?
Good question. So the question remains so a seller wants to know, I don't want to make, every buyer and every seller wants to know this. Number one, I don't want to make a mistake for both sides. And a buyer doesn't want to overpay and a seller doesn't want to undersell, right? So those are the first things. A seller's fear that we are assuming is that a seller is going to say, well, now it's a bad time in order to sell. It's going to switch. It's the same thing as what would you tell a buyer in the market 6 months ago, should wait for the market to crash. We have to ask ourselves, do we believe that the market is going to crash? Just as a show of engagement here, put it in the chat if you believe that if you're going to see prices drop. If you believe prices are going to drop, right drop. If you believe prices are going to increase, right up. Drop or up. Do you see all the differences, guys, in here? It's nearly 50% up, down, up, down, up, down. Now, granted, we are all in a very differing markets. This is the United States. So we're going to have people in Miami say, wow, my market's super hot. I'm not seeing any differences. We might see someone in, a slower state like mine, like Connecticut, and say, hey, I think it's going to drop. The reality is this. The buyers that you had, millennials that are out there, still are going to want to buy. Absolutely. The money is going to cost more. However, people still need homes. We are still short housing. It's not 5 recessions since 1980s. We have seen, of those 5 recessions, or excuse me, 7 recessions, my apologies, 7 recessions that we've seen in the last 7, we have seen every single time prices have continued to increase somewhere between the tune of 1%. While the other two,
David, your sound is breaking up again.
Okay, guys, sorry about that. Hopefully you can still hear me.
So you said price increase of 1 to what percent?
Yeah. Yep. So 2 out of those 7 were declines in pricing. One at 1.9% decline, the other at 19%. And that 19% decline was in 2007, 2008. And that's why we have so much fear. The fear is that it's going to be the same as last time. Does that make sense? When in all probability, it's not going to decline, but simply increase at only about a 3% rate. So your situation, or to answer Margaret's question, is, Mark, I would say, Mr. Seller, you're right. We're about to hit recession, which means no growth. However, no growth does not necessarily going to absolutely crash.
Hey, David, your sound's going out.
Yeah. David? Yeah, I'll just say, David, while you're trying to refresh, people want you to give that presentation again with clear sound, so we might have to schedule something for you to do it ad hoc somewhere. Marty, while he's trying to refresh, do you have thoughts to add?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of talk right now about, the market and the changing, talks of recession, this, that, and the other. We're in Nashville, one of the hottest real estate markets in the country. We're not seeing a lot of shift right now. We are seeing some stabilization. I think that's about as aggressive of a word as I can use. But I've been doing this 18 years, so I saw the downturn last time, and I'll be real honest, I'm not seeing a lot of the same signs that I saw last time here. But I in agreement with what David said, I think this is going to be something that is. Depending on where you are, it is going to be geographical, because the first time we got hit really hard, but our timing, we were just coming in it as California was coming out of it, so it was, it was very, very specific to where you live. Specific to our area, what happened last time is we had an overflow of inventory, but it was when they had the big market crash was with the lenders, over lending and, the falsified appraisals and all that. We're not seeing a lot of that. This is what we're seeing now, or is any of that, quite frankly. I mean, what we're seeing now is just, the interest rates going up and people being cautious. I just don't think it's the same thing. At all, just quite honestly. Now, I may change my tune, if things start to shift a little bit. We're just not seeing a ton of shift. We're seeing stabilization in the pricing. And so I think it's a good conversation to have with your sellers or people that are on the fence for selling. A lot of people wait to, oh, hey, when we hit the peak, have we hit the peak? Maybe we're peaking out here. I don't think it's going to decline significantly, but maybe we're peaking out. So maybe instead of, everybody giving over list, maybe the buyers get to negotiate just a little bit again. Maybe we're going back more towards a stable market versus a crash. I don't see a crash coming, but I don't have a crystal ball, as none of us do, but that's just kind of what I'm thinking. We're going to have to shift. We're going to have to sharpen our pencils and our skill sets on our negotiations again. And maybe we get to use those, and quite honestly, I think it'd be fun to get to use my negotiation skills for my buyers again. I think you might agree.
Well, and here I would add to that again, and I alluded to this earlier. Our market is still hot. The price increases are slowing down, but they're still increasing. We are incredibly short housing here. Matter of fact, we have builders coming in just within 15 minutes of my house, building 3,000 to 4,000 homes over the next 2.5 years. So anybody who thinks in my area there's going to be a crash, I'm like, there's not, because jobs are still in and we're short housing. But I would say to you, and again, I've only been doing this for about 4.5 years. I go back when I walk into these conversations with buyers or sellers, and I have data. David did a great diagram. I'm actually going to use that. I have a listing presentation this afternoon. But I go in and I have some charts from Keeping Current Matters. I've looked up other stuff on Motley Fool and Yahoo Finance and other things. And I go in and I show data and I make the case that I not only know what I'm talking about, but here's the data that backs me up. Interest rates are rising, but they're still really historically low. But as David said, I've heard 8-10% by the end of the year. Well, if you're a buyer, do you want to wait and have to pay 2% more or 3% more for the same mortgage? And I've even gone and done on a mortgage calculator and showed for their price point, let's pretend they're buying a $300,000 house. What does that mortgage payment look like if we go up a percentage or 2 percentages? And or show if they wanted a $2,000 monthly payment, how is that going to change their price point of what they can buy if they wait? all of a sudden I have people highly motivated that want to go out and look like tomorrow. We have sellers that I have to explain. And again, my listing presentation today will be going, people are going to buy your house, but the people buying your house are different. Who would have bought your house a year ago was probably a first-time home buyer. Person buying this time may be a first-time home buyer, or maybe somebody that 2 or 3 months ago thought they're going to buy a higher priced home. And now because of interest rates, you're the house they can afford. And it's going to take them a little bit of time to wrap their heads around the fact that they're getting a little less square footage or not as much features. It's not a bad thing. It's just these are the shifts that happen. So if you go in and really have a great explanation, you have some data to back you up, it's amazing how you can suddenly flip that conversation and you're the market expert.
I think that's great, Kathleen. That's really great advice. It sounds like your market's very similar to ours.
I think so. Does anybody have questions? I'm looking at the chat box. I see a few. Hey, David, you're back. Woohoo. So I think everybody wants you to give that presentation again. So we may have to do an encore for you.
Yeah. What I would definitely encourage you guys, if you're going to present to a seller right now, is, I'm less on the urgency. I just sent out an email yesterday. I got to check the open rates, but I think we were 30% plus on this thing. And just title your email this. I'll just give it to you guys. It'll be easy enough. 3 things that homeowners cannot miss right now. 3 things that homeowners cannot miss right now. And in that, you're going to describe 3 mistakes, right? 3 mistakes. Number 1, assume that the last recession was this recession. Number 2, price like today's pricing is the pricing 6 months ago. And number 3, believe that your buyer, the same buyer months ago. And then what we do is we hit them with a market update just below in that email. Guys, it doesn't have to be hard. Here's 4 things you report. Number 1,
Hey, David, you're breaking up again. So a few people have asked to have that repeated. Can you hear us? David? Okay.
Yeah, I got you guys. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to put this in the chat, and then you guys can gather from that, and then you and Marty can talk from there.
Okay. I'm sorry. You've got so much awesome info today. I'm taking notes too. Okay. While David types that up, Marty, what do you want to add?
I do think that David's got some great points. I hate that he's breaking up, but I think having the data, and you mentioned this as well, having the data to show history, over the last little bit what it looks like. The challenge with the, and you have some advice on this too, but is that, even looking back 2 or 3 months, we're having to look at, all the prices you can comp them out really high, comp houses out really high. But what I try to explain to my new folks is you've got to look at where the price point started. If you've got a $300,000 house and it closed out at $350,000, you've got to look at the bid up process there. And so the pricing, I think, for sellers is pretty key, in analyzing where they started and where they bid up to. And we are seeing some price reductions in our market, but I don't think it has anything to do with lack of buyers, because we have a really low inventory and a really high influx of people moving into Nashville. I think it's more that people are quickly comping the houses, not paying attention to where the price point started and how much they were bid up. And they're just, we're hitting a little bit of a ceiling on the pricing. So you still have to be really careful with that. So I'm using that to explain to the buyers, but you have to show them. look at this house, look at that house. They started here, they ended up there. So if we start here, the chances of us ending up higher than that are not really that great. And then you can show them some things that are currently on the market that are, currently having, sitting a little bit longer than normal, or they're having to reduce. We are seeing some price reductions. Again, with all of us being in such different areas, it sounds like your area, Kathleen, is really similar to Nashville. We're booming. We got builders moving in here from everywhere. They're building. They don't have any inventory. Buy now, move in, and our resale is really low. So I don't see a crash coming at any point, but I do think we are going to have to adjust our pricing strategies and be really, really aware of that. We are still getting multiple offers on properties, but, maybe instead of getting 10 offers, you're getting 3, so it's definitely leveling out. And I think just being honest with sellers and letting them know what that's like. And, I'm having challenges like, or being really cautious on the buy side, not to overbid in a situation if they, if the overages were at 50 and now, 50 over and now they're at 20 over. So being buyer representatives, we have to be very aware of as the market does tend to stabilize, that we're staying aware of that and not leaving, not paying more, having our buyers pay more than they need to now that it is starting to stabilize a little bit.
And I want to talk for a minute about buyers too, because when I first started, I had zero sphere. I had moved to Greenville and I knew nobody. And so the first 2 years, I had almost all buyers. If you are starting out, odds are you're getting buyers. And that's where you're going to start, because a lot of sellers, unless they personally know you, aren't going to necessarily trust you with their largest investment. What is going to be really critical for you in this time is to find a really good mortgage broker who will help you and help your clients. I deal with a lot of mortgage brokers, but there are only 2 or 3 that I know will really talk to me and tell me what financial options those clients have on their table. Can they do USDA? Do they only have so much cash? Could they do a conventional if they did XYZ, but they have to go FHA if it's anything else? If you understand that, think of that as sort of a picture frame. You're going to do this in reverse. You want the picture frame, and then you go find the picture that fits inside that frame, and that picture is the house. Especially as things get bid up in certain areas, certain hot areas, things like that, and sometimes they still have to move very quickly depending on the neighborhood and the price point. You really need to have great communication with that person. But if they're just going and getting Rocket Mortgage or going to Bank of America and those people only work 8 to 5 or 8 to 4, you're going to find that things are going to be happening on Friday afternoon late or Saturday morning. And unless you have clarity or somebody who's going to really help you understand their numbers, you may put a bid in on something that turns out later they can't do. So really start to have those conversations, and you'd be amazed at how much they're going to help you understand the market, the interest rates, and the other things, and help you be able to then talk to people about what they need to do. Questions, concerns? And oh, by the way, David just put that in the chat box, his script. So if anybody wants that. Can people hear me? It's awfully quiet.
Hey, I can hear you.
Yes, you're coming through fine.
Perfect. Okay. And does anybody else have questions? We've got about 10 minutes or so left.
One thing
This-
I'll add, just talking about the interest rates going up, and it was, Kathleen, you mentioning, connecting with mortgage lenders. I've got a handful of really good mortgage lenders here in Nashville that I network with and work with. They're all super duper on top of the whole interest rates changing, and they've got lots of marketing material and things to push out that address the changes in the interest rate and what's happening and how that affects your buying power and that sort of thing too. So don't hesitate to connect with your lenders and get some of their marketing material that they're using. I'm sure, I've got several that I've seen them pushing stuff out. I had one or two the other day that just sent me marketing material in a text and said, "Hey, this is the latest video we did, addressing, interest rate changes and that sort of thing. If you feel free to push it on your social media." And it was really great information. And because they're really heavily focused on that. So if you're looking for ways to engage or things to talk about as far as with buyers or even with sellers, check with those mortgage lenders that you trust. They're going to have some really good marketing materials and videos and things that you can share as well. So use your resources, especially if you're new and you're kind of like, what's happening? What do I do? How do I navigate this? Don't hesitate to find that really great mortgage lender and use them as a resource.
Okay. So what other people, so do you need to know how to expand the chat box and do a Control-C that will copy the entire dialogue in the chat box, and then you can open Word or some other word processing and paste it into there, and then you'll have the entire dialogue. So if anybody didn't know that. So we have, is there any other questions, scripts? Marty, do you have any specific scripts or ideas for prospecting at this point? Because that was the other big thing that people asked for at the beginning. Marty's
I'm thinking.
Okay.
You
I
kind
kind
of
of
caught
threw
me
you
off guard
a
on that one.
loop.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the scripting. Yeah, I mean, I know I'm bad to shoot from the hip. I've been doing this for 18 years, so I kind of shift naturally. But I'll tell you a class that I've taken numerous times when I start to get into times where maybe I need to get refocused on my lead gen. Maybe I need, we've been busy. We're at summer, whatever. I've taken more than once Sean Kokoska's class, and he's got great scripts. And I mean, that guy, I swear, I think he eats, breathes, and sleeps scripts. And I always go back when I'm having a market shift or something's kind of changing or whatever. I go back and just review his class and the material that I have from that. And I was just talking about with some of my team members the other day, that might be good for us all to kind of pick a class like that to just kind of go through, get back on track, focus back in, because as things shift, we will have to do things a little bit differently. So I think tapping into some different education and some things that way, especially if you're new and you've never seen a shift. I think that's a great way to kind of shift your mindset and get focused back in on the new direction.
I have to say, I'm in his Icon coaching class right now. It's 14 weeks. It's a lot of basics, but you do get a tremendous number of scripts, and it really helps you with time management and focusing. The other thing I would say is, if you're brand new, I cannot recommend this class enough. Take your PSA class, which is Price Strategy Analyst, I think is what it stands for. That is going to teach you how to comp. It is going to teach you how to do a really good CMA, how to pick comp homes, and how to do a basic plus or minus on there to get it back to your subject thing. That one was phenomenally helpful in terms of just giving me some basic info, but it totally changed my confidence level. And I would tell you that every listing appointment I've gone on, I have won because of that class. And I've also won quite a few people that were trying to decide between buyer's agents because I was able to talk them through who they were, what the pricing was. And that includes some million or almost $1 million listings. So if you can do that, take that class. That will be huge if you're starting, and huge in terms of helping you do the things like Marty was talking about of where did they start? Where did they end? How did they, was it a cash deal? Was it an FHA? What was going on? So take that PSA class if you can.
I have a comment.
Yes. Go ahead.
I'm Martha Matthews Vasquez in Florida. I started in 2005, very beginning of the drop. In Ohio, I started in a bad market. Best time to start is a bad market because you learn how to sell in a bad market. Anybody can sell in a good market. Other agents are so used to good markets that they don't make the change. So you'll have an advantage.
That is excellent advice, Martha. And I would also tell you, like the person that was doing the classes before us, a lot of people are going to drop out because they don't have the type of support you're getting here. They're not having the classes, they're not having the sort of forums like the ICONversations to go in and learn. And we have over 5,000 agents in the Greenville-Spartanburg area. I'd be willing to bet you in 12 months that number has been dramatically reduced. And it's because a lot of people will not have the type of support and access and collaboration that we do. Yeah. Other questions?
That's all really great advice.
Yeah. Okay, and for Sean Costa, he has a website and it's Icon Coaching. Okay, so look for Icon Coaching if you want to do that. And if he knows your EXP, he gives a discount because he's with EXP. He used to be the #2 person at Keller Williams for all their training. And they have a huge training coaching system, and he helped create that.
Yeah, he's a great teacher, great coach, and I highly recommend that class. Whether you're new, whether you're not, like I said, I retake it from time to time just to refocus. And I love that Kathleen talked about, he goes back, he does some of the basics, but I think that it's super important when things are shifting. Sometimes we need to go back to the basics. We get in a hurry, we get busy, market is great, things are moving along, and sometimes we do need to go back to those basics and just kind of regroup and start over. And or at least that works for me a lot of the times. I really enjoy doing that, refocusing, reorganizing, and kind of working some of the kinks out that you realize were there when you were during a really busy time. So sometimes a little bit of downtime is not bad. Embrace it, enjoy it, and use it as a time to pick up some continuing ed, some good education, some good training, and also reorganization and implementing some new things into your business.
And the final thing I'll add just for coaching is if Sean is not your thing, because again, you have to be at a desktop and it's once a week and all that. Tim and Julie Harris have a coaching system too. And a lot of that is done through podcast and other things. It's a little bit more flexible. So if one doesn't work, try the other. But again, I'm just telling you, persistence, patience, and paying attention to the basics is going to help everybody get through this. And there are some people that made more money than ever as agents in 2008 and 2009. All of us can be phenomenally successful over the next 12 to 24 months. So any final comments? Otherwise, we'll wrap this up and hope everyone has a wonderful Father's Day weekend.
Thanks so much, Kathleen. Always a joy to share the stage with you guys. David, thanks a lot. And sorry I came in a little bit late. I was having some challenges with my technology, but it's always an honor to be here. And I hope that I added something to the conversation today.
Oh, I love sharing the stage with you guys. I learned something from you and David every single time. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Wrap it up.